Waiting for somebody, but I think we better start. I'm going to call the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte, State of California, into regular session, back into session here. And the board is now acting as the Board of Supervisors and also as the authority for all the special assessment and taxing districts. And all those items that are scheduled will be held at that time. Any items that are not scheduled will be taken at any time for staff and public availability. And we will start. We had Barbara Pearson was going to join us to do the Pledge of Allegiance. She is not here yet, so I'm going to ask Sheriff Dean Wilson to lead us in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, introduction of new employees. Yes.
Heidi Kunstl, County Community Development Department, and I'm pleased to announce that we have hired a new account clerk, Joseph Fallman, and we're really excited to have him, and he's a real quick learner and already helping us out immensely, so we're glad to have him.
Another local.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome, Joe. You got anything to say?
Sure. I was born in Sacramento, but when I was 2, I moved up here. So I grew up here from age 2 till I graduated high school. So I wasn't born here, but I am a local.
That makes you pretty local.
And I'm glad to be working here, and it's nice to meet you all.
Welcome. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Any report of actions from closed session by County Council?
Yes, we do. On the Crockett matter versus Del Norte County, the board unanimously voted to defend with Supervisor McClure being absent. On the McNamara versus Del Norte County and Remy Vista, well, Gary Blatnick and Remy Vista, the board by a 3-to-1 vote voted to defend that case with Supervisor Gitlin voting an opposition and Supervisor McClure absent. And on the biological diversity versus Skolatsky Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case, the board unanimously voted to join in on an amicus brief.
Very good. Thank you. And that last one had to deal with the rim fire. Okay. At this time, I would request any deletions, additions from members of regarding the agenda from members of the board at this time. Any such actions? Okay, I would like to pull item number 5 and place it in general government so we can have a little bit of a discussion there or presentation. And other than that, this time I would like to receive reports from my fellow supervisors regarding what they've been up to. I know it's been a month since we met, so hopefully brevity prevails. Supervisor Gitlin.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's been a long hiatus. I'm a busy one to speak to that. Since there was no meeting on Veterans Day, I was delighted to participate in the parade and was honored to be the MC of the Veterans Day dinner, which served over 200 meals to both vets and non-vets. Special recognition is given to Lieutenant Junior Grade Coast Guard Commander Mark Tatera and his superb presentation at the dinner. I also met with local governances at the Intergovernmental Relations Committee at the Wastewater Treatment Conference meeting room. At the meeting, I reported that Caltrans economic analysts were in our community interviewing many businesses on the impact of a completely disabled last chance grade 10.3 miles south of Crescent City. That report will be released in January. I met with a member of the Del Norte Healthcare District who told me the district is moving forward on an eminent domain action against Sutter Health Corporation. Doctors also met with Congressman Huffman and congratulated him on his opposition to Proposition 46, which failed on a 2-to-1 ratio. Representative Huffman also underscored his support for affordable, accessible health care. I'd like to commend Representative Huffman for his engagement in our community. Though Sutter Health is not for-profit hospital attempting to lower its status from acute care to critical access, The lowering of the beds will go from 49 to 24. Regrettably, Sutter Health continues to refuse to divulge financial figures or meetings minutes to justify such a move. It's disappointing that this lack of candor defines the administration of our hospital, and with the impending eminent domain action, perhaps it's time for this community to seek another healthcare partner. Also donated blood to the North Coast Blood Bank Halloween afternoon. That same afternoon, I attended an executive Chamber of Commerce meeting which conducted nominations for 3 new members. Last week, I attended the 120th annual meeting of the California State Association of Counties. It was down in Orange County. There were many excellent workshops. Probably the most profound was a presentation from what's called a Blue Counties Innovation Summit over the silver tsunami. The central theme of this presentation is by the year 2020, the elderly population will more than double, 112% increase in the Golden State. Our study showed nearly half of those in the elderly will live until their mid-90s, which is an astounding figure. The growing population, I'm of the opinion, must be engaged and implemented into our social structure, hopefully through a growing volunteerism effort. And also read an article written by Coastal Voice Marianne Fallman's letter about the condition of the VFW post-1381. This is a building that's 89 years old, and I must tell you is in superb condition, far from the indication that it is a blighted condition. Repairs have been made to windows, it doesn't leak, and the Vietnam room is now functioning, which is upstairs. So I want to thank all the staff who have displayed great help in keeping this beautiful building in its great pristine condition which exists today. Yesterday, the revolving loan committee approved 2 micro-enterprise loans for $50,000 each for Greenscape Landscape and Hensel's Fresh Seafood and Deli at the harbor. And good luck to both of those enterprises. And that's my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes, thank you. I had actually, even though it's been a month since our last meeting, had pretty light last month, but a lot of that is because I'm kind of, I'm almost like Supervisor Sullivan. You could call me a lame duck because I've got, I had surgery on my right knee to replace my right knee, and a week from this Friday I have my left knee replaced, so I will probably be incapacitated again. But I still had some meetings, had a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting, and then later that day we had the groundbreaking ceremony for the RSA projects that are the first phase of the projects that are going on out there, and hopefully that will continue on. I attended the Veterans Day Parade. I attended a local, a Delmart Local Transportation Commission finance meeting. I attended the Resource Conservation District meeting, where most of the discussion was over grazing leases. It looks like we're going to lose another year because the state cannot get their stuff together. I filled in for Chairman Finnegan for agenda review, and then I filled in for Supervisor McClure, I believe, on the RCT meeting, which one of the things that we did was sign an agreement with Greyhound, so now our local transportation system will be part of Greyhound also, and we also approved a bus stop protection at the apartments downtown. So that was it for me.
Thank you. Supervisor Sullivan.
Thank you. It's been a busy month, basically. To begin with, attended the Rotary Foundation dinner, which is a regional dinner that they hold up here. And right after that, attended the cancer fundraiser at Elk Valley Casino for the 3 kids afflicted with cancer. And it was a great turnout, great fundraiser for that. Have attended 3 different solid waste management authority meetings, 2 of them to look at the job description for the interim director that solid waste is going to be floating here pretty soon. Hosted a coffee and cake social on Veterans Day after the parade for our veterans. Always an honor to do that. And attended or ran a local transportation commission meeting. Also, and have been investigating, although last week I was out at CSAC for the week, but investigating constituent concerns on their house building process. At the annual meeting, good meeting, it was down in Anaheim, and lots of seminars and meetings to attend down there. But some of the highlights, to Supervisor Gitlin mentioned a few of them, but one of the main speakers was Paul Bettner. I'm going to mess up his name here unless I look it up. Buettner? Anyway, his presentation was on blue zones. And what he did through National Geographic, they did a study on where do the most centenarians live in the world. So they had Loma Linda, California as one. There was a city in Costa Rica, a city off the coast of Italy, as well as off the coast of Greece. And just some very unique things. And what they've done is they've taken some of those things they've learned and actually adopted cities in the United States to basically, in one case, they went and had restaurants that were blue zone restaurants where they actually went in and reworked the menu so the healthy stuff didn't have healthy written on the top of it, which people usually avoid. It was written, a lot of it was in adjectives, and just a different process of looking at things. And they've had some success in Southern California, and I had a conversation with the gentleman and also California Endowment about the possibility of bringing them up to Del Norte County and possibly adopting this area. Really exciting presentation, got a lot out of that. Also, numerous other conferences, one county conversation on water. Obviously, the state is dealing with a different situation with water than we are up here. It's just interesting to see the disconnect and the one-size-fits-all model that they seem to use for the state. And our voice basically was to say, you need to look at this at geographic regions instead of saying one-size-fits-all this, we're going to do this for the whole state. So it's always interesting, sometimes the disconnect from where what the rest of the state deals with versus what they deal with. Attended the Rural Counties Caucus, as well as the Coastal Counties Caucus. And then also just a note, Supervisor Finnegan got a round of applause after 4 years representing Del Norte County on their executive council. I know he's the first supervisor from Del Norte to actually be president of the California State Association of Counties. So congratulations on that. And I think that's it for the moment. So thanks.
Thank you. I also had a couple of meetings over the past month, and started with a Family Resource Center meeting where we talked about the Resource Center and its uses. Talked with First Five about that. Had a Crescent City oversight, the Survivor Agency to realignment, trying to find strategies to bring back as much of that money that was set aside out of the tax rolls to the taxing entities like the county and the schools. Had a CSAC Finance Corporation conference call, attended the airport JPA meeting, and then also attended the groundbreaking out at, it was poor weather, so we did it inside, but we got the photo op with the shovels and whatnot. Also at that meeting, I want to mention that the Elk Valley Rancheria presented the joint the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority with a check for $100,000 that will go towards matching funds towards some of the projects. Had a CSAC officers call, the State Association officers call. In fact, had a few of them. Had another First Five meeting, Children and Families Commission. Going forward, we're going to be going back and looking at some of our strategic plan, and reviewing our budget, and have that facilitated again early in December. Attended the Veterans Day Parade. Seemed to be well attended. I was unable to attend the dinner because I was on the road to Reading, where I attended for the next 2 days a California Emerging Technology Fund broadband symposium, talking about different issues with the FCC, some of the providers, how to get underserved communities to adopt best practices, to get funding, to get redundancy. Del Norte County has been pointed out as one of the areas in the state that has had tremendous success, and so we are looked at very positively and always asked to be involved in the presentations. Then had an executive board meeting, actually had two CSAC executive board meeting calls talking about personnel issues and planning for the conference. had another officers' call, and then went to the annual conference. And it's already been talked about what happened at the annual conference. A lot of workshops, a lot of speakers. It's when we elect our new officers going forward. The new president is going to be Vito Chiesa out of Stanislaus County, very even-keeled, nice guy, will do very well. Also passed the torch, as Supervisor Sullivan mentioned, to a new rural representative that will be Richard Forster from Amador County. I know he lobbied hard on behalf of the fairs, and he will, I'm sure, do a good job for us. It was nice to be recognized, even though that's not what we do it for the 4 years of leadership and time and personal capital invested by me. So it was nice to get the little standing ovation from a room full of people, almost unanimous. There was one that didn't until he was pointed out and shamed into participating and standing up too. Disappointing that it was one of our own. Anyway, in that annual conference, some things that were discussed in this workshops was the Affordable Care Act, poverty, the working poor, coordinating services in a disaster, the power in service organizations, how to work with them. Again, the working poor, tribal relations, road use fees, the legislation process. And as far as road use fees go, I've been nominated by the State Association to sit on the California Transportation Commission. That's going to have a 2-year pilot or 2-year study to develop a pilot project on road user fees. How are we going to pay for these roads going forward? Gas tax isn't enough, and now with all the energy efficient cars, there's even less gas tax going forward. And definitely don't want it based on miles, because then that would definitely hurt the rural counties. Just imagine if it was on miles and you had to pay for your gas and be taxed again going back and forth to Klamath or Smith River every day. So we're going to be looking at that. Hopefully I get appointed to that by the governor, but we'll see. And then they also talked about gang violence. One of the premier speakers for me was Dr. Greg Boyle. And I'm not sure how many of you have heard about Homeboy Industries. Dr. Greg Boyle is a Jesuit who is a pastor of Dolores Mission Church down in the heart of LA's gangland. 8 different gangs surround his parish, or in his parish. And he, his whole thing is kinship, is working together. He has been successful in getting gangs, opposing gangs, that will kill each other in the street, to be able to work together in a restaurant, in a silkscreen factory, in an embroidery company. He finds them jobs. He teaches them about the value of kinship, of working together, looking past their disagreements, tattoo removal. Just, if there's I guess people recognize Mother Teresa as a walking saint, and I would submit that probably Father Boyle is the same way. So if they can do that in LA and other parts of the United States regarding gangs working together, there's hope for us here in Del Norte County, let me tell you. We'll work on the kinship. Also took the time to work with constituents, reviewed several calls or received several calls, Klamath Road issues, permit issues, blight issues, working through the process in the blight issues with our code enforcement officer. And Dave, I know we'll be talking about him a little later in this meeting as well. So very productive month. And with that, we're a little early for public comment, so we're going to go ahead and why don't we take general government. And I had pulled item number 5. And item number 5 is a board recognition of Code Enforcement Officer 3, Dave Mason, as California Code Enforcement Officer of the Year 2014, as requested by Community Development. Heidi, do you want to speak to this, please?
Yes, I'm very pleased to announce that one of our own was given a statewide recognition, which is fairly impressive. He was selected for this honor based on his accomplishments and contributions to code enforcement over a 22-year period that he has been involved in serving the public. It's well documented that the volume of cases that Officer Mason performs far exceeds the statewide average. He does this with very limited resources and mostly on his own with very little support staff. He's received a variety of local and state recognitions, which are listed in the board report that you received. Also, he has had leadership roles with the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers over the years, and helped in literature reviews and so on. So personally, as a department head, I'm very pleased that he is an employee of my department. He certainly elevated the code enforcement program from the county, and I just want to say thank you to Dave.
Dave?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that it's been an honor and a privilege to work for Del Norte County. I wouldn't be able to have done it without my lovely wife who's here in the audience. The amount of support and assistance I get from her is immeasurable and greatly appreciated. I had an opportunity one time, I was telling her about my day. She asked about my day. I said, well, I was grocery shopping and I ran into the DA. And we were talking about this case, about how to prosecute, whatever. And it occurred to me, if I'd have stayed in Orange County, I could have probably made more money, but I wouldn't have the opportunity to know the Board of Supervisors by their first names. I wouldn't be able to discuss cases with the district attorney in the supermarket aisle and be involved to the level that I am with the community. Because in a bigger jurisdiction, faces turn into numbers, names just turn into reports, and you just don't have the opportunities that you have here in a small community to do good. And like I said, it's been an honor and privilege, and thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I for one, and I'm going to let the other board members, I'm sure they have something to say, appreciate the way you go about your job. I know it is frustrating for some of the people that turn in the complaints, but there is a process. It's a process even we have to remind ourselves about. And you have been excellent about staying out of the fray and sticking to that process and being very successful in abating some of these, mainly by working with people. And it's a hell of a compliment, or a heck of a compliment to say that a code enforcement officer is a people person, but I think you are, and I thank you very much and look forward to working with you again in the future.
I just want to say one of my highlight cases was in Klamath. It took 2 years to get them into compliance, but they did all the work themselves, and we supplied dumpsters, and they had to pay for those at the end. But by working with them 30 days at a time through the hearing process, they cleaned up a gigantomous mess that we would never have been able to do on our own. We just wouldn't have the budget for it, and they did it themselves just by working with them.
Right, and I don't want to underscore the fact that being recognized at a state level, what goes with that and what goes into that. So you're to be commended. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd like to ditto what Chairman Finnegan says, but also your responsiveness, your accessibility, things that are things that really help us in our job, and I really appreciate it, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would actually jump in with the other supervisors on it. You've done a great job. In my years on the board, you've always been responsive. You've gotten a lot of work done. It's never a comfortable job, I don't think, because there's somebody on the other side that's not happy. They got to clean up what they have. But I appreciate the work you've done, and the fact you're recognized at the state level just kind of underscores that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Dave, I guess I get to speak to you last, and I can't tell you how proud I am of the job you do. You know, we've worked very closely over my 2 years on the board, and I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been to work with you and see things getting done. So I nominated you for this very award in 2013. I think you came up $1 short, and I'm glad you got it in 2014. You're well-deserving, and we've got more work to do. So I know you'll be hearing from me, and I thank you so much for your participation and cooperation. You're an asset to our community.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, I'm going to go back and have a report from the CA. Oh, I'm sorry, Sheriff. Yeah, you interact as much as anybody with Dave.
Well, I just wanted to express my gratitude to Dave and to his participation with our felony investigation unit and with our officers and deputies over the past 12 years that I've been sheriff. His work, his dedication, and his ability to come when called and when needed. As you know, with our drug enforcement unit, that we often go into homes that are uninhabitable, unfit, or because of the modifications of indoor grows, oftentimes they're unsafe. And Dave has come to our aid so many times, he probably can't even count how many times he's been with our units into these homes and taking the appropriate action to make sure that our communities are safe and that these homes are habitable once again, and shutting them down when necessary. But I appreciate all of his dedication, his time, his effort, and we have a great resource in him in Delaware County. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to backtrack a little, and actually, before I take the CAOs, no, let's go. We haven't done the consent agenda. Go ahead.
Since our last meeting, been working on a number of employee evaluations, had a few meetings with members of the public regarding issues and assistance, meetings with multiple departments, OES meetings regarding Ebola, personnel-related meetings with different department heads. I did attend the Chamber Mixer grand opening of Big Five. Went to the IGRC, the Revolving Loan Fund Committee, met with a number of representatives from some of our partnering agencies, and attended the Vets Parade, and was able to take a couple of days out of all of that and spend a hunting trip with my dad.
Good. Thank you. So let's go to the 10:25 timed item, which is public comment. The public may comment on any item that is under the jurisdiction of the board. However, if it is another item on the agenda, you might want to wait and hold your comments until that item is brought up. But any member of the public wish to address the board at this time? Sure.
As I find myself on the back end of this 12 years, I appreciate the time that I've spent with you on the board, and I appreciate your efforts that you have given to the Delaware County Sheriff's Office and your time. To that end, I'm speaking on an item that I normally don't speak on, and in the hopes that hopefully we can find some resolution to the impasse with the Sheriff's Association going forward. You know, one of the hardest things that I have as sheriff is trying to retain our personnel, try to keep them motivated and try to keep them, especially given the set of circumstances that you know are very evident in Delaware County as far as our pay compared to others. As we go to this impasse, or heading towards this, some of that is because of the fact that what we're offering to the sheriff's employees is not the same amount of raise as the other employees and the associations have gotten in Delaware County. The problem with that request, or that problem with that inequity, is the fact that we send the message, unfortunately, to my employees that they are not valued the same as the other employees in the county. As we try to keep their morale up, their spirit up, and teach them that we are valued, because the dollars don't make that. It's the fact that we have to show that they're a valued employee, that what they do is important and valued by us. That's what keeps them here. It's not the dollars and cents, because they can get more somewhere else. But when we have this inequity in the request, it shows the wrong message to my people, to the staff, and it becomes a problem of morale. So I hope that we can find a resolution to that, because the cost of the food is the same for all employees in the county. The cost of milk is going up, the cost of our fuel is going down, thank heavens. But those things, the costs are the same. And the fact that, you know, county employees haven't received raises in so long is the same for all, including the Delaware County Sheriff's Office employees. So my hope is that can be resolved. The other issue I hope is that there was on the table with the NMAU was a canine issue. I had two young officers.
Yeah, I know this is public comment, and I've given you great latitude here, and I haven't invited the council of the county council, but everything you're speaking to is been a closed session, negotiations, and I'm not sure how proper it is to be negotiating, because I certainly am going to direct this board not to respond.
I would expect you not to respond.
Okay.
You know, it is, and it's not negotiations. I'm just telling you that, you know, the two young officers put their time and effort into to train these dogs with no guarantee from me. It was an asset that could be used and should have been used, I believe, by the county for over 2 years now, almost 2 years now. And unfortunately, it got caught up in the negotiations process. And unfortunately, because of that, we missed the opportunity to have a valuable asset, but also we sent the wrong message to young officers and young employees that if their efforts are taken and their their incentive, their initiative is there, that should be rewarded and not quelched. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I know I, for one, felt the wheels of the bus go over my back, and I'm sure you did too, so.
Yeah, this isn't the proper venue to be discussing anything that happens with negotiations. I know, I've spoken with the sheriff about a number of things in the past, and I'm sure he's heard other things. Negotiations, and to a point, are closed session items between the board, the county negotiating team, and then with the sheriff employees. The only thing I will respond to in regards to that is that we have negotiated with the bulk of our employees, and they did get cost of living increases. But I'm not going to get into the details because I don't believe that you negotiate in a public forum at this point. There are certain legal obligations that we have not to.
Okay. Any other public comment?
Ted Ward, Acting Director and Program Manager for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. This is with respect to consent agenda item 3. And since I submitted the information to Kylie for publication of the agenda,
Do you want to wait till item 3 is brought up?
I'd be happy to, but it was on consent, so if you could pull that, that would be great.
Sure. Pull it when we bring up consent.
Got it.
Or you can speak to it when we bring up consent, your choice.
Okay, I will.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, then we're going to bring this back to the board, and 10:30, we had a timed item to conduct a public hearing to discuss, take possible action, and adopt resolutions 2014-05-058A and 058-M regarding the street vacation application of Pacific Shore subdivision as requested by the Community Development Department Assistant Engineer. And before we get into this presentation, we're stepping on the toes of the FAA and what they think is a conflict of interest again. Council, how should we proceed?
The two board members who are on the BACRA board as well should abstain from voting at this point. I think there is some question because we are down a member. We need a majority in order to pass this based on our administration manual's voting requirements.
Then would you want to follow the same process we did when we were talking about purchasing?
If I
Do
could
you
just-
want to weigh in? Council from BACRA?
Yes, I think the problem is, members, because Supervisor McClure is absent, we don't have the same rule of necessity. The necessity can be mitigated by her presence, and apparently, hopefully, she'll be at your next meeting, but I fear that we may have to postpone this item until we have 3 of you that are not conflicted.
That's
Or
my... that's
allegedly
how
conflicted. I don't.
That's how I read it as well when we look at the requirements of a majority vote.
Okay, so we will not be drawing straws as we did last time.
No, that was a unique situation because 4 was required for
Okay.
a quorum. Here, only 3 are required, and you have 3 non-conflicted members. You just need to have them at the meeting.
Okay, good enough. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm sorry for the large presence by BACRA board. We're going to pull it, but if you want to speak to it.
My question is for both councils. This was an advertised public meeting this morning. I understand that perhaps we have to wait on the vote for the resolution, but I wonder about still continuing with the public meeting portion of this item.
Well, would it work if I opened the public hearing and then continued it, if you will, adjourned that public hearing till we can get 3 people here?
You would open it and then continue it to the next
Okay.
board.
So what I'm going to do is I am going to go as the chair, open the public hearing to discuss and take possible action adopting resolutions 2014-058A and 058-M regarding the street vacation application of Pacific Shore subdivision as requested by the engineer. And I'm going to ask one more time, since the public hearing is now open, can 2 take comment?
I would recommend, since the 2 members that are here, it would be best if we had all
Okay.
3.
All right, then I'm going to go ahead and not adjourn, I'm going to go ahead and continue the public hearing until next meeting. It will be advertised and timed. Okay? Correct?
I don't think you'll need to re-advertise because you've opened the public hearing.
Okay.
And it's now being continued on the record, so I don't think another advertisement is required. I just wanted to make sure that our two members that are here, that are not conflicted, are you going to be here on the 9th?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I originally thought Martha was going to be gone on the 9th, but I guess it was for today's meeting. We'll have to check on that. If we have to have a special meeting, we will. All right, then we're going to go ahead and continue the public hearing and move on. How about going back to the consent agenda? At this time, can I get a motion on the consent agenda? We've already dealt with item number 5.
So moved. Are we pulling item 3 for discussion?
If it's your wish.
Yes.
You can request it.
We're here with the California United Home Care Workers to receive a proclamation, item 2.
Good. There's no reason, no need to pull it. We're
Oh,
going to go
okay.
ahead and deal with it and then open it
Thank
for
you. I
discussion.
wasn't sure of the process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion? We have a motion. Can I get a second?
You're going to need to second it.
You guys got conflicts? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and second. Approving the consent agenda and pulling item number 3 for discussion separately. Any public comment?
I think Acting Director Ward wanted to comment on, yeah.
We pulled it.
We pulled, okay, so we're going to, okay.
That was in the motion.
Okay.
Any other comment? Public? No? Back to the board. Poll the vote, please.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes, I need to recuse myself for conflict of interest on item number 6 and item number 10.
Okay, Supervisor Sullivan?
Yes, but I have to recuse myself on item 10 due to conflict of interest.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
And Chair Finnegan?
Yes, but it appears that we only had 2 votes on item 10, so...
That's correct. It's going to need to be bumped to the next meeting.
Okay. So just for, to let people know, item number 10 was approving the lease agreement at 475 K Street for, as requested by the Health and Human Services Director, so that will be put on the next agenda. Okay, within the consent agenda, there was 2 items.
I think, Chair, if I might, just
Yes.
because Sheriff Wilson's been up here a couple times, but I do, this is a $190,000 grant, and appreciate you following through on that. I know sometimes when you get near the end of a term, it's other things get in the way, so we appreciate your dedication on that, so thank you.
Part of that consent agenda was a proclamation regarding in-home supportive services, and I've asked Supervisor Sullivan to read that proclamation, please.
Okay, Del Norte County Proclamation in recognition of National Family Caregivers Month, November 2014. Excuse me. Whereas family members, friends, and professional home care workers devote themselves to providing in-home care to their relatives, loved ones, and clients, during National Family Caregivers Month, we recognize and thank the humble heroes who do so much to keep our families and communities strong. And whereas in-home caregivers are a vital pillar of our nation's long-term care system, enabling millions of seniors and people with disabilities to continue living with dignity and self-determination in their own homes. The work of these caregivers require immense compassion, attentiveness, understanding, and a deep commitment to the well-being of others. And whereas California's In-Home Supportive Services, IHSS, program serves nearly 500,000 clients, IHSS workers preserve quality of life for these individuals, save taxpayer dollars, and prevent more costly hospitalization or institutionalization. And whereas in-home caregivers have an immeasurable impact on the lives of those who they care for, but their hours are long and their work is hard. Many family caregivers are unpaid, and most home care professionals receive modest compensation. They often put their own lives on hold, sometimes sacrificing more lucrative careers and other life opportunities because they are dedicated to lifting up those in need. And whereas National Family Caregivers Month is a time to reflect on the compassion and dedication that in-home caregivers embody every day. As we offer our appreciation and admiration for their difficult work, let us also extend our own offers of support to them, their loved ones, and their clients. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors that November 2014 is National Family Caregivers Month in Del Norte County. The Board of Supervisors honors and supports the work of in-home caregivers in our community and encourages all residents of Delaware County to pay tribute to them for their exemplary service to our community, adopted on this 25th day of November 2014 by the following vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Shane Brenton. I'm lead organizer with the California United Home Care Workers Union. And this is Diane Williams, one of our many caregivers and members of our union here in Del Norte County. We are a union, but we're not here today to talk to you about negotiations, so no problem there. But I did just want to pick up on one thing that Supervisor Gitlin said, which is that we have this silver tsunami coming down upon us. But when we talk about it that way, on one hand, it's very accurate. We have to plan for this event. On the other hand, it doesn't have to be a disaster. These are our elders in our community. These are veterans. These are, valued members of our community. And if we plan properly, we can make sure there's a long-term care system that's in place for them. And that's part of what this program does. And I want to thank you for acknowledging that. I want to thank you for acknowledging the hundreds of workers here in Del Norte County, like Diane, who do this day in and day out, and for your staff who have really worked with us, which is not always the case in labor management relations, but it is the case here in Del Norte County, and it means a lot to us. Diane, did you want to add anything? Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. The work you do is very little pay and sometimes no reward other than the family that you're attending to. This was a problem that was passed down from the state. Started, I think, with the closure of some of the county hospitals, and an obligation that was, borne by the state through the payment of taxes, and instead they passed it down to the local Board of Supervisors to deal with as best we could. We could not do it without you. So the community could not do it without you. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to go ahead and take number 17, which is to review and take possible action on the local planning council's annual self-evaluation that was submitted to the state as requested by the
Did we
coordinator.
have number 3?
But we do. I'm just going to take this one first, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Item number 17, can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to review and take possible action on the local planning council's annual self-evaluation that was submitted as requested by the coordinator for the LPC for the Child Care Council, and public comment on this. Back to the board. Any comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Back to item number 3. Direct the Board of Supervisors to affirm that at this point forward, the number of members of appointees to the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force will be 9. Ratify the attached update bylaws as approved by the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force on October 13th of this year. Extend the application deadline for additional appointees to the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force through December 19th of this year, as requested by the program manager of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Mr. Ward.
Thank you. So the task force at their November meeting asked that the application deadline be extended further through 20th of January 2015. So I wasn't able to get that information into the board packet, and so that's the only change to the request.
Okay. So you would ask that we amend that through just January 20th, 15?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll move to approve. Second.
Then moved and seconded. Public comment on this item. Then it's back to the board. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much for your work on that. And with that, we're at the 10:45 timed item, which is developing a Smith River Fishery Management Plan update. And Chairman of the Smith River Advisory Council, Jim Waldvogel. Jim, good to see you again.
Good morning. My name is Jim Waldvogel, and I'm Chair of the Smith River Advisory Council. And I'm going to just take a brief time to update you on where we're at with this fishery management plan. The Smith River Advisory Council was started in 1990 with groups from all throughout the community, and many of the supervisors have participated in the things we've done over the years. In 2002, we developed a Smith River Fish Action Plan, which identified a lot of habitat and resource and project issues in the river. And one of the things that was kind of a side to that was the fact that there was eventually going to be a fishery management plan needed to manage our sport fisheries within the Smith River, besides just regulations that existed at the time. Since that time, politically, it has become actually a requirement to have a fishery management plan for all rivers, all coastal rivers on the coast by the National Marine Fisheries Service. In the case of listed species, there's a special fishery management evaluation plan that's required by the department to present to the National Marine Fisheries Service. The Smith River Advisory Council kind of decided to be proactive and maybe be the first. California does not have any fishery management plans on any of their rivers at this point. Washington and Oregon have developed a good portion of theirs in the last 4 or 5 years. So we decided to be proactive and approached the department, and some representatives of our group met with the Director of Fish and Game in Sacramento, and he kind of gave a direction to the department and ourselves to do a cooperative project to try and develop a fishery management plan for the Smith River. We felt that this was one of the rivers, the condition it's in and the type of fisheries we have, that would be conducive to have this done, and maybe we'd be a prototype for the types of fishery management plans that need to be done. So we met on October 22nd, and the Smith River Advisory Council did, and decided to go forward with this, and we've had our first workshop. And in your packet, you have an outline of the kinds of items that will be addressed, and this is strictly at a draft stage right now. So what I'd like to do is introduce Tony LeBlanca, who's the Northern District Coastal Manager for the Department of Fish and Game, in case you have any questions on why we're following through with this process and why it's a cooperative project the way that it is. And if you have questions of myself or Tony, we can relate to that. We are not really going to sit here and go over the plan and stuff. We are going to make a somewhat formal presentation at the next Del Norte Fish and Game Advisory Committee meeting to have discussion. So anybody that's interested in participating in that, Zach, is that the first Thursday of each month? So it's the first Thursday of December.
Jim, just to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
So when the Smith River Advisory Council, or our Fish and Game Commission, gets all the input and you formulate this plan, will it then come back to us, the board, to adopt?
It'll come back to us in numerous opportunities and probably several forms before it officially goes to the department for them to finalize that report.
Okay.
The Director of Fish and Game would like to see a rough draft sometime in February.
So this is a heads up?
This is a heads up
Okay.
preliminary thing that we want to get started. We wanted it to be in the form and format that the community would be comfortable with, as opposed to somebody else at the department or whatever. The political arena right now is that there are groups that could, if you don't have fishery management plans for your rivers, they could shut sports fisheries down. And there are groups that are kind of putting pressure in different areas to do that. So anyway, if Tony wants to come up, and he can maybe answer some questions on the departments.
Good morning, Supervisors. Tony LeBlanca. I am the Program Manager for the Coastal Fisheries Program at the Department of Fish and Wildlife in California. I appreciate the opportunity Zach and Jim and others have taken to contact us and decide to initiate a partnership. I think it's begun to be fruitful already. We've had a couple meetings. We'd like to get this draft, as Jim stated, out by February. You talked about where it comes back to you folks. Opportunities for the public to comment typically come at the backside of a lot of planning processes. I think we'd like to make this an opportunity for folks to participate at the onset.
Good. Good strategy.
Yeah, I appreciate the heads up on it this time. I know that SONC plan was kind of crammed down our throat, and there was no local input in that process at all. And now we have this plan that's not very well written, with not a lot of science in it. So I appreciate the fact you got local involvement and some expertise in there versus what we're dealing with on the voluntary plan, which we knew wasn't going to be voluntary after a while. So.
One of the things we wanted to emphasize on doing a fisheries management plan versus the fisheries management evaluation plan, which is called an FMEP, because that's required for the department to present that to the National Marine Fisheries Service, was that that's a legal document, and the fishery management plan is a document that's a working document that the community can work with, and we didn't want that to be tied up in some legal problem related to, whatever things go on in terms of the process. So we decided to do this first. Now, probably 80% of the information that we're going to have in the fishery management plan is going to turn around and be used in the FMEP. But so that's where we're standing in terms of the difference between the two, in case people hear of the two different requirements.
Good. Questions or comments from supervisors? How about the public? Any member of the public wish to comment on this? Of course, this seems out of it's not funny asking for it, you have to ask for it on everything, but the public is going to have a bite of this apple going forward several times. I think it's just great, the way the tactic you've chosen this
And just
time.
for your information, this is all being done by volunteers within our group at this point for the draft. Now, the final product, there'll probably be some costs, and we'll have to find some funds or something to come up with that final product. But
Okay.
at least we'll have something probably at the 90% level finished that will be functional and workable.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment over here. Please approach the podium and identify yourself. No, that's the podium there.
Tom Stewart from Gasky Community. Coming here today because on the radio this morning, I heard that this was going to be presented.
Tom, I'm going to ask you to speak into the mic so it can get
All
picked
right.
up on TV and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you. And it was, well, I've been out on the river for the last 3.5 weeks. And at being on the river as a sport fisherman, many guides, many personalities, local personalities are there. And there's a lot of discussion amongst ourselves regarding different management plans. However, as we're there fishing together, we're there and the management team is here. When they discuss of volunteers putting together these management plans, I personally, I don't even know about it. I don't know how to contact this, how to get involved. And no disrespect, but a lot of times these management plans come to fruition without, when you say input of public, the changes are made either regulatory or through a management plan that affects me personally and affects those that are sport fishermen. I hope that it is advertised through your associations that the public can become part of this process. I think one thing that Mr. Sullivan said was a certain plan, which I'm not sure what you said,
The
songs?
SONC, it's it had to do with the coho recovery plan in the Smith that was voluntary, but it hasn't turned out that way, and there was some
Right.
bad information in there.
And when you said the one thing shoved down our throats, as a community member, a lot of times these management plans take effect and it affects us out there somehow. And we never knew why we didn't have an opportunity to address situations or circumstances that would have helped the management plan rather than hinder it. Going back to something you said about disconnect from southern areas to here. Northern California Smith River is very, very unique. A management plan that Fish and Wildlife in a different area would say, no, we want you to follow what we did in the Russian River. This isn't the Russian River area. So if there is a way, if personally I can contact you, or if it's better advertised, what these type of plans will incur and what's inside of them before it's implemented.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to, what I heard is that this is different. That you came before us to tell us that there is going to be a plan.
There is
that
gonna be
the
a plan
public
process.
is going to be invited to participate.
Right.
And so now I'm going to invite you to go ahead and give us a brief timeline, projected timeline, and all the opportunities the public is going to have going forward.
Right now, with the outline that you have in hand, we've asked different members of our group to do drafts of that, and those will be coming back to me hopefully by the middle of December, and then we'll get a form and a format going in January. Our Smith River Advisory Council meetings are advertised, and usually the press puts it in, or it's on the radio, and if you want to contact Zach Larson, he can get you on our list. We probably have a half a dozen guys that have been participating for the last 15 to 20 years in our group related to that, and local fishermen and sport fishing groups and that. Our meetings are not set at certain times. This last year we had one meeting. Usually we have 3 or 4 meetings a year, so it just depends on the availability and the issues that come up. And we try and make that as public as possible. When we went through our fish action plan, we had a series of community workshops, and that was a real important part of that. This, we probably won't have the community workshops, but we will definitely have our meeting notices and our workshops that we get together and ask for input from individuals related to that. So it's a little different process and a little different timeline in terms of that. We hope to get this draft by the middle of February off.
Do you have a website? Are you going to post any of these?
Is our website still active, Zach? Our website hasn't been active once we lost our funding for our watershed coordinator 5 or 6 years ago. So The website hasn't been active. Now, maybe we could tie something in with the county. I don't know. Randy Hooper was,
I
willing
think
to help
that'd be a
out
good
and stuff,
idea to give the public a chance to see the
Yeah.
direction you're going. If you start to put this stuff out on what your discussions are,
Right.
then the public would have more of an opportunity to find out what they need to comment on.
But we can definitely get any individuals that want to participate, we can get them on an email list, so when we send out our notices for getting our work groups together and stuff, we can do that. We welcome all the input we can get.
Good.
So.
Any other comments? Not, thank you very much,
you.
Jim. Look forward to the progress. Which takes us to item 18, which is to direct staff to submit an application to Caltrans Aeronautic Acquisition and Development Grant for the development of the airport land use compatibility plan. Randy?
Is his mic on? Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay.
Last year, the Airport Authority submitted 2 planning projects to the California Division of Aeronautics that had to do with funding for programs under the statewide Aeronautics Capital Improvement Program. Recently, the county was notified by the Division of Aeronautics that the CTC had tentatively scheduled Delaware County to receive about $150,000 for these planning projects affecting our public use airports here in Delaware County. Basically, now that the State Transportation Commission has scheduled the project for funding, the county has to formally submit the grant application. So that's what the request is from the board today. The project has been classified as a Priority 1 ranked project by the CTC, which indicates that it has a pretty high probability of being awarded if we decide to go ahead and apply for that grant. The grant from the state would pay for about $135,000 of the development of what's called an Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, or ALUCP. Under that grant, there's a 10% local match, so for a $150,000 project, that would mean that our local match obviously would be $15,000. The director and I have met with staff from the airport as well as county administration in order to identify potential sources for that local match. We believe that if we get the direction from the board to go ahead and put the grant application together, that we can identify definitively a source for that local match. There's various sources, general fund and non-general fund, that may become available. An ALUCP, just real brief background, is a planning document that establishes compatibility within what's classified as an airport area of influence. Currently, we don't have an ALUCP for any of our public use airports. That could be a sticky issue in the future. So the recommendation from staff is, now that this funding has become available, we go ahead and apply for it and see if the CTC will go ahead and award it. Some of the benefits, and just beyond compliance with regulations, would be, we all remember what happened at Ward Field this past summer. That was a compatibility planning issue. So the hope would be that if we get some of these some of these planning documents in place, we can avoid or alleviate some of those issues in the future.
Good. Questions?
Randy, can I just ask you a quick question on the local funding aspect? I know we spoke about this before. SRS Title III, Secure Rural Schools, this is your sourcing, or general fund. Do you have a sense of where this is going to go?
The Title III it's a possibility. I think, because there's the Ward Field component to it, you certainly have some eligibility criteria that could be met by the inclusion of that particular public airport. I think it may be a bit more of a stretch to try and leverage the Title III onto Jack McNamara and Macbeth and Klamath. But again, there are some potential other sources that we've talked to county administration about that would make it not necessarily a general fund burden.
So my question would be, can you perhaps merge monies from the different entities other than the general fund to total this $15,000 commitment?
Yeah, based on my review of the A&D grant program, I don't see any provisions that would prohibit us from doing that. I think we could.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on this? Okay, so back to the board. Can I
Move
get
to approve.
Second.
moved and seconded? Any further discussion? Poll the vote, please.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Sullivan?
Yes.
Chair Finnegan?
Yes. So will we have to take an action on this in the future? I know this was to direct staff to submit the application, but
Yeah, similar to the previous project, this is really kind of the initial step in the process. And yeah, there will be opportunities where it has to come back to the board, whether it's the adoption of the plan, the hiring of a consultant, various stages, even if under the assumption that the grant is approved. It certainly would come back.
Good, thanks. Number 19 is to provide direction to staff to work with the county council to amend the sign ordinance pertains to the timing of political signs. Speaking of blight.
All right. It was brought to the attention of the County Planning Commission by a member of the public that there was an inconsistency between the city ordinance and the county's ordinance with respect to the days prior to an election that political signs could be placed. And the thought was to try to make them consistent. So we reached out to the city's community development director, Eric Taylor, who then did a poll of his commission, and they both preferred the 45 days, which the city currently has, versus the 60 days for the county. The County Planning Commission preferred the 45 days that the city had. So they asked that we move it up to the Board of Supervisors to see whether or not you would like to direct it back down for them to consider in a similar amendment.
Good. Supervisors, what's your pleasure? Supervisor Gitlin, you're in the city, so it affects you both ways.
I think it's a good idea. I think it eliminates a lot of confusion where the city starts and where the county starts, and a lot of streets in between. One side of the street is the county, has a sign up 15 days before another city. In reference to the actual signage, I don't know if I'd call it blight, but it gets a little tiring looking at these signs day after day, after week. And I would support this 45-day constant between the city and the county just for clarification purposes alone.
Any other supervisors?
Do you need a motion?
No, but I'm going to take public comment.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. Let's
Public
make
comment?
it all the same.
Yeah, it wouldn't bother me if we restricted it even more. All right, so directed. Please develop it. Yeah, day before, day after would be perfect. Go ahead and draft something and bring it back to us for action. And then number 20 is direct staff to schedule a public hearing to consider the temporary closure of a portion of Union Street as requested by Community Development Department. Heidi.
Hello. I was going to ask if this may potentially be tabled, because if you were to direct us to do this and we were to do the public notification, we wouldn't have enough time for the December 9th meeting, and I'm unsure whether or not we're going to have a meeting on the 23rd. The two letters that we have for the joint recommendation, from what I understand, both of those, the people who signed those letters for us will no longer be in their positions. So if that makes a difference, we could table it until January, and then we could meet with the new sheriff and with the new lieutenant at the highway patrol. Otherwise, we can move forward today, and knowing that we may have different leadership.
It's up
opinions.
to the board. I think it's board policy. I think we've talked about it before, the need and the necessity. But what's your pleasure?
I'd be fine with going forward on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions about what we're proposing to do?
Right, so Heidi, you'll reach out to Sheriff-elect Apperson.
Well, I think unless I'm hearing correctly, that we're going to go with the recommendations that we have as far as moving forward, so.
Oh, so today is.
So you would be giving us direction today to post the public hearing notice, but it probably would not be until a meeting in January. In the meantime, we could also still meet with the new folks
Sure.
and just give them an idea, but we just wanted to have some assurance that if you were to direct us, that we weren't going to go through that effort and then you'd say, okay, not interested.
So my question, Heidi, would be, are you going, if we act on this today, will you go solicit new letters in the packet?
I don't believe I've been directed to get new letters, but I think we would meet with them just to let them know what we have planned and the date that we would be taking it to the Board of Supervisors as a public. I'd also like to add one thing that I believe in the board report referred to 8 unique owners in the area that would be affected. The largest landholder, we have since received verification that they are in support of this, so that's a really big deal for the effort.
Heidi, while you're right there, I know we've had requests like this before, that we have said that we couldn't do it, or that it wasn't easy for us to do. What makes this different?
This one, I believe, due to the level of criminal activity and the joint support of the sheriff's office and the local CHP.
Okay.
Dave, do you have something?
Yeah, I just want to say I was just out there yesterday, and we really do need to do this. I've already spoken to Sheriff-elect Apperson. He's indicated his support, but he can't do it in writing until he's sworn in. And I haven't met with the new CHP commander, but I can't imagine that there'd be an issue with it. So we'll definitely seek additional letters from the new guys as well. And the main difference, just to clarify, because the vehicle code is this thick by itself. This is a temporary measure that can be renewed a limited number of times. But it's for 18 months, and I think it's 7 times it can be renewed, something like that. So that puts us far enough out in the future that if we'll know whether or not this is working pretty quick.
Well, good point. It's temporary closure, it's not an abandonment.
Right.
Okay.
Which is why we can do it. In the past, we'd sought ways to abandon it, permanently close it, and that's not easy to do. Right. This is a simple temporary closure.
Very good. Public comment? All right, back to the board. You know, I was out there a couple of weeks ago. And it's just, there is not enough money nor time in the, if it was all general fund money, to clean up what has happened out there. It's just abhorrent. And there's other issues we need to deal with out there too that don't have necessarily to do with this, and it's the families with kids that are living out there in the middle of this. I mean, people would be shocked if we had to take a tour out there. So I thank you for pursuing it, and unless I hear differently, we're going to go ahead and direct staff to proceed. As far as enforcement, I guess that's up to the enforcement agencies. The board's going to adopt the policy. Thank you. Or I shouldn't say that. The board will vote on adopting the policy when you bring it back. Thank you. Number 21 is to approve and authorize the chair to sign a letter of support to the FCC in relation to the proposed Comcast acquisition of Time Warner Cable, as requested by myself. At the California Emerging Technology Fund meeting in Reading, the 2-day symposium regarding broadband, I informed the group that, and I think a lot of the public aren't aware, that Comcast is taking over Charter. And as bad as some of our constituents have told us stories regarding their service and pricing regarding Charter, what we ran into was that, the knowledge that we really didn't have a local jurisdiction that we could turn to. The Board of Supervisors didn't have authority. It was actually the Public Utilities Commission, in conjunction with some of the feds, helped a little bit with the FCC, but it really was the state PUC. What we have heard from everybody, from Sonny McPeak, who is chair of the Broadband Consortium, California Emerging Technology Fund, and working with different communication groups, that if you think you had it bad with Charter, you have seen nothing yet. That Comcast, the way the packages that they offer, the affordability they offer, et cetera, often comes into question, and that we should get ahead of this. And so that's why you see in our packet a letter to the FCC regarding 5 principles that we're asking them to consider when they talk about allowing this merger. And the 5 for the public have to do with, let me find it here for you. It would be include all low-income households, so that we strongly urge them to require the following 5 recommendations if they approve the Comcast, Time Warner Cable, Charter, and/or corporate consolidation. Include all low-income households. In other words, extend internet essentials to all low-income households at a reasonable cost. Set performance goals. Capitalize an independent fund and coordinate with the states, which there is one through the CETF. And establish an advisory oversight committee, something we don't necessarily have now, and offer standalone internet service rather than forcing you to bundle something that they couldn't afford. So, seems like good principles. Board members, comments? How about public comment? Any member of the public wish to comment? Okay, back to the board. Can I get a motion? Well, the chair can't make a motion. All righty, we'll see how it gets reported out in the newspaper. We will move on since there is no motion on that. Approve and okay, I know how many times in the past I have been cornered because we can't involve its Charter's workings, and here was an opportunity. It's too bad we missed it for today. So let's approve and authorize the chair to sign a letter of support for a grant to Western Rivers Conservancy for purchase of land in the Klamath River Basin, I believe up in Blue Creek, and as requested by the Executive Officer of the California State Coastal Conservancy. Phil, do you want to speak, or Jay, go ahead, why don't you speak to it first and then...
I'll introduce it, and then we can get some feedback from Phil. The request before us today has to do with the transfer of land that includes Humboldt County and Del Norte County to Western Rivers Conservancy, and then ultimately over to the Yurok tribe. Key points in this, in the discussion that we have had, dealt with property taxes and yield taxes, of which inside this letter there are some assurances to the county that those would continue to be paid because of location and or policies and or status of the agencies involved. Beyond that, typically the board has avoided any type of involvement in transfers of land in which the no net loss resolution was adhered to and everything was consistent. So at this point, the request before you appears to be consistent with that no net loss resolution.
Good. Questions from board members? Okay, then I'm going to invite Mr. Wallin to Phil's with the Wild Rivers Foundation Conservancy Board.
Yes, Phil Wallin, Vice President, Western Rivers Conservancy. Been working on this project for some years with Green Diamond Resource Company and with the Yurok tribe. It's focused on a place called Blue Creek, very important cold water tributary to the Klamath. Every Chinook and Coho stops over at Blue Creek. They have to. It's cold water, comes out the Siskiyou Wilderness, and we've always felt like that needed to be protected long-term as a kind of safety net for salmon runs on the Klamath River. The Yurok tribe and Green Diamond have sort of been at odds over management there. Green Diamond finally said, well, if you want to manage it, you ought to buy it. So we stepped into the middle there to help the tribe round up the capital for that. We're going to hopefully buy that property, a chunk of it from Green Diamond in December. We're going to hold it for 7 years because there's some creative financing involved there from the new markets tax credits. A little complicated, kind of gives me a headache to think about it, but we will hold it for 7 years before transfer to the Yurok tribe. I understand from previous work with your chairman here that the county's between a rock and a hard place with regard to revenues. Fully accept responsibility. In this case, we've made a corporate guarantee to the board that we will stand behind payment of taxes, yield taxes on this property, both while we own it and while the Yurok tribe owns it. And I wouldn't expect to do any less in a case like this. About 10% of this land is in Del Norte, 90% is in Humboldt. For some reason, they're not that concerned, but I understand where Del Norte's coming from, so that's where we stand.
Thank you, Phil.
Phil, while you're,
yes, sir.
if I could, while you're there, what is it that you're going to do with
Well,
this?
while we own it, we will pay taxes.
No, I don't mean that. But,
Yes.
you said the purpose, it says here in your letter, the purpose is to restore and conserve
Right.
salmon habitat. So what are you proactively going to do? What's going to be different than what's being done now?
Within the immediate vicinity of Blue Creek, there will be not much harvest in the riparian zone. There will be some areas that are unstable. Special attention will be paid to them in terms of roads, culverts. A blowout on Blue Creek would just be catastrophic to salmon runs. So the tribe, while we own it and while they own it, they're just going to pay very, very, very special attention to the watershed conditions in Blue Creek. Make sure that try to alleviate the danger of a blowout on unstable slopes.
Does that mean road closures, culvert removal?
There could be some older roads there that would be put to bed. They will continue harvest in the Blue Creek watershed, but it'll be pretty light touch. It'll be conservation forestry. There will be some bringing in of woody debris into the stream, stabilize the banks. They'll be doing a lot of monitoring of sediment and temperature in Blue Creek, so we get early warning if there's a problem developing. They have a pretty good fisheries department that's very tightly focused on Blue Creek. Yes, sir.
Phil, is it safe to assume this would restrict angler rights, your actions as management?
There will be public access there. There's not a lot of fishing goes on in Blue Creek itself. There is a good deal of fishing where Blue Creek comes into the Klamath, and that will continue as per state regulations. I don't know that there's any further regulatory measures contemplated here, Supervisor. I think it's mostly about land management. I mean, I can look into that for you if you'd like.
Well, I think it's a question that begs to be represented. Is the angler's right to fish in a specific area going to be compromised? I mean, that was a question that I'm sure would be asked of me when I'm about to vote on this. And if you could address that issue, I would very, very much be appreciative.
To my understanding, the answer is no. There is active sport and commercial fishing on the Klamath, and certainly Blue Creek contributes to that. You always see a cluster of boats there at the mouth of Blue Creek. That's really where most of the holding and the fishing happens, at the inflow from Blue Creek into the Klamath. Water's colder there, cleaner. I think on Blue Creek itself, no, I don't think you're going to see much catching, and what there is be catch and release, I would think. I will make inquiry and report back to you on that.
Thank you.
So my understanding, I'm familiar with the area. Simpson Timber Company used to own it, and then of course they changed Green Diamond. It's in private ownership. From time to time, access to that area has been restricted by the timber company.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
They used to have a campground there that they did open up in better times, that allowed the public access to camp there on Blue Creek, and then people would wander down to the mouth, or you obviously could access it by boat. But I think the key point for me was that, as in our partnership on Goose Creek, we said there has to be some sort of mitigation when something is taken off the tax rolls, and there has to be, in that case, it was we asked for access, which you got us a road that the Forest Service has since not repaired, so we don't have the access down there. But I think we got $450,000 out of that from Western Rivers, which I thank you for. So it's part of that precedent that was set, and I appreciate that. The tricky part here is that when it goes from private party to private parties, Green Diamond to you, it stays on the tax rolls. And so we don't interfere with that, just like we don't interfere with, was it Smith River?
Smith River Alliance?
Alliance, but it's when they act as agents for the government and give it to the government is when we get hurt.
Exactly.
Because then there's no taxes. So I think what I am pleased to see, what you and I talked about, is, okay, what happens in 7 years when it goes into the management of the tribe and ultimately gets put into trust? Same thing, is that we lose the tax benefit both on the yield tax and on the ad valorem tax. And you have assured us in writing here that Western Rivers is going to make sure that the taxes are paid. If the Yurok tribe doesn't, or the federal government, the BIA doesn't, that you will be the guarantor for that, and I appreciate that very much.
So let me ask you then, just on a technical question then, assuming we pass it as a letter of support for the two grants, 7 years, is the board going to have another opportunity to comment when, I mean, because it looks like it's going to go into trust land at that point. Will the board have another opportunity, or?
Yes, indeed. The condition of both grants from California Coastal Conservancy and the Wildlife Conservation Board is that they have a veto over any transfer of the property. So in the event that the land is transferred from us to the tribe, or if the tribe were to want to put that into trust, there'd be a chance to support or object to that, because the state has to approve that transfer. So there will be a public process at that point, an opportunity to weigh in.
One last question, Phil. So what I'm hearing clearly from you, if we approve this transfer and sign on this, that for a period of up to, it comes into a conversation where it becomes trust territory, that your conservancy will make good on the payment of property taxes for that at least 7-year period. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yes, yes.
And at
Yes,
that
so
point,
long as it's owned by either us or the Yurok tribe,
and at
we're
that
good for
point,
that.
this board would then address, if in fact the Yurok tribe moves to put it into a trust, then we would have another discussion.
Exactly.
Okay.
And let me say, the tribe's policy and intent is to pay taxes, so I don't think that Western Rivers Conservancy is being generous here. It's just you might prefer to have us on the hook than the Yurok tribe. And
But you're on the hook for not just property taxes, it's also yield tax
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's, looks like it's
it would be their policy would, because it's not in the reservation, it would be their policy to pay taxes. And so I didn't do this just for the heck of it. I talked with them about it.
I'm not a big fan of supporting these transactions like this, but if we don't support, then I'm sure those assurances go away, and I'm not able to go that direction either. So I'm good.
Well, and to distinguish between what hurdy-gurdy was and that process of us, of asking for support for a brokered deal for the land to be bought from private to given to the government and taxpayer money in the process. I had a problem with that.
There was no giving.
Yeah.
There was no giving of any property.
Yeah, not giving, excuse me, sold to the federal government for too high of a price.
But let me point out, the last one that Western Rivers was involved in, which was Goose Creek, and they paid this.
Yeah.
They paid the mitigation. And furthermore, the last
Can you get us the
paragraph-
road back,
First,
by the way? Because we'd love to get to that property, we just haven't been able to do it for over 8 years.
And furthermore, the last sentence of the last paragraph, other than saying thanks to the board, is that Western Rivers Conservancy will stand as a guarantor to the county that the Delaware County land will remain taxable, both ad valorem taxes and both yield taxes on the forestry, both while the land is owned by Western Rivers Forestry and while it is owned by the Yurok tribe. And that, I think, says it all.
Well, that's the capper.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Any public comment? Back to the board. Can I get a motion? To approve and authorize the chair to sign the letter of support?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you, Phil. At this time, number 23 is to consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to, wait a second, before we do that, we missed a budget transfer, and which was number 13, to approve and authorize 11-01 in the amount of $3,380 within the sheriff's budget.
Move to approve. Oh.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any public comment? Back to the board. Poll the vote, please.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Sullivan?
Yes.
Chair Finnegan?
Yes, and so number 23 is to consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the county of Delaware. Got anything for us? Jay?
As far as budget matters, I wanted to report to the board that we did finalize a refunding of the certificate of participations. We had a special session to discuss those. That closed at a 3.6% interest rate and with no extension of the terms. Essentially, these certificate of participations were what was used in order to build the juvenile hall as well as improvements to this building. The savings is approximately $1.27 million dollars, no bucks, dollars
You
over
saw
the
that
next
ad, too.
15 years.
Commercial, 1 million.
about $90,000 a year that we won't have to pay. That it's a better rate, better deal for the taxpayers, and all in all, a great job done by Neil Lopez, who has stayed on top of this with our bond counsel for about 2 years to get the proper bank and a great rate, and everybody that was involved in that is to be thanked for their involvement. You know, our bond counsel didn't have to stick with us for that kind of period of time, and he did. It's a great deal, and we're fortunate to be able to have done it.
And I gotta ditto what Jay said. Neil did some phenomenal work on that, and saving $90,000 a year for the county is huge, and refinancing an extremely low rate. So great work.
And the key part, no extension of terms. So the 15 years is what we were on the hook for with the debt anyway. So a good deal all the way around. We also, from a legislative standpoint, I've been in touch with Greg Burns. We've been talking about SRS and PILT reauthorization and when that might come about and in what form that might come about, as well as the essential air service and the discussions with Delaware County and what may be happening with that. We'll be continuing on with those discussions, and I'll bring reports back to the board when needed.
Good. Yeah, congratulations on that. That's a phenomenal, that kind of savings. With that, we've come to the end of our business session. I want to say one thing to everybody here, but that's going to be watching this too, just wishing everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. And as I said this morning when we did our moment of reflection, to perhaps during this season and during your Thanksgiving gatherings, not just to reflect on intentions of needs and wants, but truly reflect on our blessings and to give thanks. And I appreciate all of you. Thanks very much. Meeting adjourned.